Hi, I'm Mark Sultana here from Canadians in London, and today we're very lucky to have with us the outstanding Amanda Marshall. Thank you so much for being with us today.
Thank you for
Amanda's
having me.
distinctive voice has been part of the soundtrack for Canadians for years, and here in London, her songs have been a regular feature at our Canadians in London parties and our Canada Day playlist. We've actually released a special playlist of some of your hits today and shared that along with your lovely message that you sent us talking about tomato ketchup chips, which I have to say are a constant theme of discussion. Canadian junk food in general is something which is often discussed. So first of all, before we talk about the London show, as I said, tell me a little bit about this ketchup chip story and where that came from, and is there anything that you miss while you're away?
Um, Oddly enough, it's really funny because we are the band in general, my band, we're a big snack band. I have come to on its stomach. So we're always like we always have an ongoing like snack table, snack wheel, every rehearsal. We stop for meals. We're very food oriented. And there's always a fight over like who's going to eat the ketchup chips. I don't know if they have all dressed chips either in the UK, but
This
all
is
dressed chips are a thing here. I'm not so much with like highly flavored chip. I'm like, I like salt and vinegar and stuff like that. But it took me a long time to get into ketchup chips. I think I was probably in my like mid to late 20s before I ever had ketchup chips. And I'm one of the only people now in the band who eats them. Because we'll buy them like in bulk. We'll buy like big bags of, chips in bulk, the boxes of chips, and you get like multiple flavors. And I'm one of the only people who will eat the ketchup chips. So
how amazing. Um, yeah, it's really funny. I will say that like these sort of comfort foods and snack foods and things like that. I mean, we actually have a poutineery here in London, which we run and we feed all the Canadians poutine and all the comfort food. We've done
oh, you run
pierogies.
it.
Yeah, I
Oh,
do. I do.
wow.
Yeah, yeah. We do Canadian catering, pop-ups and all that sort of stuff. So yeah,
All
yeah.
right.
Whatever they want, we try and provide. We've even done Montreal smoked meat, you name it. We've tried it.
You're kidding.
Yeah,
Wow.
it's all about the real thing. See, for you, it's all very easy for you back home. You can find this stuff everywhere, but in London, you can imagine the cheese
But it's
curds
funny
were an
when
entire
you're
mission.
yeah, right. When you're around it all the time or when it's accessible to you all the time, you don't really think
You
about
don't
it
really
at
think
all.
about it.
Yeah.
Exactly. I mean, when you're abroad, obviously, if you're in Germany or you're in London, I mean, you have some great options for food. Do you enjoy the
Mhm.
international cuisine as much as missing the cuisine from home?
I do. I'm one of those people. I'll pretty much eat anything. I think one of the what I really remember and the meals that are really memorable to me from years of touring are the really exotic meals, things that that were unexpected.
Hmm.
Eating really super fresh, authentic Japanese food for the first time was a game changer.
Mm.
Eating. I'm trying to remember what else we've encountered through the years. We've had. I mean, I always say I'm going to retire in Italy because I've never had a better meal ever. I've never had a bad meal in Italy
No, I
ever.
know.
And the thing about Italian food in Italy is that, a tomato in Italy, like you think, well, we have tomatoes everywhere, but this is a tomato, And so just eating food in and of the region while you're in the region changes, I think, your whole perspective on the cuisine itself. It's really amazing.
Yeah, I know, 100%. I think that whenever, I mean, I'm blessed with having friends in Sicily, and when we go over
Oh
there,
man.
you go to the greengrocer, the whatever the produce section.
Yeah,
Everything looks like it's come out of a dinosaur movie or something.
I know.
It's like Jurassic vegetable. It's great.
Yeah, I know.
So, you're coming back to London after almost 20 years.
Mhm.
What's it like? You're coming to the lower third in Denmark Street, so you're right in the heart of, I guess they call it Guitar Pan Alley or whatever, Tin Pan Alley, where they were very famous for instruments and lots of things over the years.
Yeah.
What's it like returning after such a big break?
It's amazing. It's unexpected. I didn't expect to be doing it this year. the opportunity just arose, and we were like, yeah, why not? We should go. It's really funny. I was telling somebody the other day, London is of huge significance to me. My mother, you may or may not know, is originally from Trinidad. And when she first left Trinidad, she had found, she's the last of 12. So she had a lot of older brothers and sisters, and they had all, a great number of them had immigrated to the UK. They were living in London. So she was living with a couple of her older sisters. That was the first place she ever lived outside of Trinidad. And she spent about a decade there before she eventually found her way briefly to the US and then into Canada. She was working at the Canadian Embassy, interestingly enough, in London. So I grew up, hearing like endless stories about London. I still have family there, so who would come and visit us in Toronto. So I grew up, getting like treats from London and getting like the chocolate bars and all that kind, all that stuff. And but hearing about my mother's time in London, so it was of huge significance to me the very first time that I got an opportunity to play in London and really get to see a lot of the places that I had heard about growing up. My favorite story that I was just telling somebody the other day is that through sheer coincidence, the first tour of that first album, I was in London the day my manager called me to tell me, and I can't remember exactly what the milestone was, but I think it was that the record had gone like triple platinum or something. It was like a big deal. And I was standing in front of the Tiffany and Company store. I think it's on Bond Street
Bond
in
Street.
London.
Yeah, I think so.
Yeah. And I was standing in front of, I didn't have any like real money. I wasn't really making any money yet, but we had been on tour forever. The moment sort of hit me, and I thought, I'm going to go into Tiffany and buy myself something. And I did. I walked into Tiffany and I bought myself my first piece of like significant jewelry. And every time I wear it, I think of that moment. I always think of like how weird it was that that happened in a city that was of such great personal significance to me because of my mom, and that I really got the opportunity to kind of have this huge adult milestone in London, kind of by myself. I wasn't with anybody. I just happened to be standing in front of this store. It's I have always we've always made an effort to come back to London every time. It's not always convenient when you're doing a
Sure.
European tour. So, and my grandmother happens to be, and I know this isn't the same, but my grandmother happens to be Scottish on my dad's side. She's from Edinburgh. So, and we got a chance to go to Scotland as well. So it's always been a real kind of personal a place of personal significance for me. And it was one of the places I wanted to come back to. I think the last time we were there was with Whitney. I think it was the Whitney tour, which was sort of the last big significant European tour that she did. We were out with her for a long time in
Wow.
like 99, 2000. Yeah. So coming back is going to be great. I'm really excited about it.
Wow, that's amazing. I mean, for a lot of Canadians here, you're tied to road trips, summers, much music, and, big life moments. Do you hear from fans? Do they come back to you and remind you of those 90s moments and those
Oh,
later
yeah.
ones as well?
100%. When Heavy Lifting, the new record came out in 23, and we went back out on the road. I was so bowled over. I was just so struck by how I had not realized how when you're touring a record like that that's so successful, you're sort of insulated from a lot of it. You're really in a bubble. And you think you're absorbing a lot of it, but you're really not. I mean, if you're doing it right, you're really not. Because you're busy and you're sort of, you have there's this whole infrastructure that springs up around you to protect you and to also help you and to, to aid you and help you get your work done. So to hear how significant these songs, what a place of significance these songs had held in people's lives. They've been through births and deaths and divorces and, weddings and all that stuff. I never really counted myself among that kind of music. I don't know
Mhm.
why. I mean, music is significant to people. It certainly is to me, but I just never really thought of myself that way. I think growing up, you always think of the radio as like this magic box that like, these sounds come out of it and they affect your life. But you don't really count yourself among those people. And yeah, it's people have been reaching out since since I came back to really hammer that point home, and it's amazing. It's very, very moving. Really, it really is. It's very it's kind of a heart-stopping and heartwarming thing to be carrying it around.
It's great. I think it's wonderful when, you've got that appreciation no matter how many years down the road. And it
Yeah.
sounds like you really engage with your fans and you enjoy those moments. So one thing I was going to ask about, which we didn't sort of put in questions, is Canadian content, working with other Canadian artists, the drive to promote Canadian talent and how that operates both globally and within its local markets. Anything to say about that?
I think, Canada has always, I think, stood out as unique in the sense that we are a great breeding ground for talent. We haven't always been great at creating our own star system. I think through the years that has changed. And I also think that it can be at times that aspect of it, the lack of a sort of an internal star system, which is not to say that we don't appreciate talent. Canadians have a huge appreciation, and I think they're also great at spotting talent. But we have been, I think, historically perhaps better at exporting talent than at promoting talent internally the way some other countries do. Because when you travel around the world, you will know, I noticed that, when you go to Australia, there's a whole other thing happening in Australia that nobody knows
Absolutely.
anything about. The UK, Britain has always had its own ecosystem of talent. Um, but I think the export of talent as Canadians, it has really enabled us to kind of, infiltrate other parts of the world that we wouldn't necessarily get to. We're not Canadians are historically not we're not trumpeters. We're not horn blowers.
It's
Um,
changing.
it is changing, but I also think that the that the that we are we it enables us to kind of quietly slip in and take over sometimes, which is not a bad thing. It is not a bad thing. It's not to say that the Canadianness of that art goes unrecognized. Ultimately, everybody knows Drake is Canadian. Everybody knows The Weeknd is Canadian, but it's kind of I think it's maybe the second or third thing people know
Mm,
about them,
mm.
as opposed to, everybody knows that Hova's Canadian or Hova's, American, that Jay-Z is American. Um, yeah, I don't necessarily think it's a bad thing. I mean, I have great confidence in like talent. Like I think talented people will always kind of find a way. Talent for the most part,
Mm,
not always, but for the most part, I think talent kind of finds its way. Quality will
mm,
always kind of
mm.
find its way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that, Canada has its own musical ecosystem.
Mhm.
And, I think that as a social enterprise, the musical ecosystem is supported within Canada's borders. And I think that, the knowledge of the artists, and if you listen to FM radio, although I don't live there now, whenever I go back there, always still a lot of Canadian content on the radio, and that is a very Canadian thing. And you notice it when you leave, you notice it when you're there, and it supports the talent. I mean, we could name numerous artists who haven't had the international success that you have had, but that have
Mhm.
had really big success in Canada. And so that's
Mhm.
kind of part of that, how that ecosystem tends to work. I mean, go south of the border and say Kim Mitchell and Max Webster, you know what I mean?
Right? Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how it is. There's certain people that are really popular in Canada. Everybody knows all their songs, their anthems. So when you perform, so songs like, Let It Rain, Birmingham, Beautiful Goodbye, The Dark Horse, they mean a lot to people. We talked about that. When you perform these big songs, do you feel them differently than when you did when you performed them originally? Has the meanings changed for you? I mean, you've been singing them a long time.
Sometimes, yeah. I mean, you can't, I think you'd have to be dead for that not to happen. If you're not growing, you're dying. Beautiful Goodbye is an excellent example of that because Beautiful Goodbye is a song, it was written by Christopher Ward, who you probably know, and Dave Tyson. And that was a song that sat in a drawer for a lot of years until I came along and they sort of pulled it out and dusted it off and said, what do you think about this? And that song, I think when I recorded it, I think I was like 21 when I recorded it. And lyrically, conceptually, it was speaking to things that I hadn't experienced myself, a sense of real deep loss and, profound sadness over the end of a relationship, that sort of thing. And I hadn't experienced that. So I was to a great extent playing a character. The lyrics were sort of above me at that particular point. Um, as I have aged and grown into that song, there is a real authenticity. There's a different kind of authenticity to the performance. When I listen to the recorded version of that song, I love it. It's amazing. It is exactly where I was at the time. There's a real sort of deep naivete and sort of innocence to the performance. And I can hear myself like reaching for the emotion that, trying to be a grown up.
Mm,
And singing the song now is a much more kind of relaxed version of me. I always say that, my people, I think people have a hard time believing this, but my absence from the music business, I'm certainly not the first person to have experienced this kind of derailment in their career, but my absence from the music business was absolutely the best thing that ever happened to me. It made personally and professionally, it allowed me to sort of become the person I was supposed to be all along. And it gave me an opportunity to really grow into, I think, the performer that I always really wanted to be. And a song like Beautiful Goodbye is a perfect example of that. Other examples as well, Dark Horse and stuff like that. But
sure.
yeah,
Excellent. I have a couple of quick questions. So Caesar or Bloody Mary?
neither. I don't drink.
Okay. Ah, okay. Well, we'll take that. Okay.
But I'll
So
watch you.
okay, here's another one for you. Toronto country cottage or being traveling around, a foreign destination. Where are
Oh,
some of your favorites?
traveling around a foreign destination. I
Foreign
think I've been to a cottage
destinations.
like once. Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Well, listen, Canadians in London, they should come to see your show. Why should they come to see you?
They should come to see the show because I think it's a perfect opportunity, first of all, to hear these songs in a setting that you will probably never get to see them in again. It is a stripped down, intimate setting. It's just going to be me, a couple of my buddies from my band who are going to bring their guitars, and we're going to really do an intimate. I don't know if you're a true Canadian, you will remember the intimate days of intimate and interactive on
I
Much Music.
certainly do.
Yes, and that for me was one of the great talk about a great Canadian contribution to entertainment. That was a great thing. And this is going to be sort of like that. And I'm really, really looking forward to being able to kind of to talk to people and kind of talk them through the songs as well.
Perfect.
Yeah, so it's going to be great. I'm really, really excited about it. I've never seen this club before, but I've had friends who have played there, and I'm very excited about it.
There's the intimate clubs in London are great. I've heard great
Yeah.
things about the Lower Third. It's right in the heart of where musicians have been coming and sort of getting their equipment for years. Everybody from the Beatles to anybody else has been on that street picking up their equipment to go out and perform. Has it been a journey for me? One more sort of question, a sort of question statement. Has it been a bit of a journey for you coming from like singer-songwriter to now being a front person and fronting a band? Because I know as a musician and performer myself, you go through that sort of has that been a transition for you? Obviously, you've had a lot more experience. Does it feel a lot more comfortable on stage as a result?
I've had the exact opposite experience. I never thought of myself as a songwriter, which sounds
Okay.
weird. I came to songwriting sort of by accident, and I fell backwards into it kind of as a means to because I had a record deal and I needed songs to sing, and I
Hmm.
sort of fell backwards into it rather than somebody who kind of comes to it as their first love. I love it. I do like it, and it has taken me a long time to realize that I'm not just a dilettante, that I am actually a songwriter. I always, singing for me was just what I wanted to do. It was my vehicle to get to see the world. It was my vehicle to get to sort of, to live a sustainable, comfortable life.
Hmm.
Songwriting for me is something I discovered that I was good at, that I liked. It enabled me to be collaborative, with other people, to do it with my friends and that sort
Own
of
your own
thing.
publishing rights.
Oh my gosh. That was really at the heart of it the whole time. Yeah, and it is, and it's important. I think it is important. It's great if you can do it. It's funny touring with somebody like Whitney. You watch somebody who's, goes out there every night and, essentially
Yeah.
tears a hole in the sky with her voice. It doesn't really matter where the songs come from, but she was somebody who appreciated good songwriting.
Mm.
I always tell this, I'll tell this story really quickly, but when we were on tour with her in 99, there's a song on my second record called If I Didn't Have You. It's one of my favorite songs. I co-wrote it with Eric Bazillion, who's the guy who wrote "What If God Was One of Us,"
Oh yeah,
and
yeah.
I love the song. It's a big ballad, and it starts with a big whistle at the top. And we had the whistle recorded because it's hard to whistle live every night.
Mm.
So we're on tour with Whitney, and it's like, I don't know, maybe third to last show, second to last show of the tour. And we'd been out for a long time. And I still hadn't really met her. I'd sort of seen her in passing. And so every night when the whistle started, I would turn and take a drink of water. And this particular night, I turned back around and she was standing at my microphone. I was like stunned. And she sort of thanked me in front of the crowd and introduced me. We were in Germany. And she said, introduced me and so on and so forth. And then she leaned in to give me a hug and then leave. And as she leaned in, she said into my ear, God damn, I love this song.
Oh,
And
nice.
that for me as a songwriter was
How
so,
wonderful.
it's one thing to have
That's
a singer sort of say, I like the way you sing that song, but to have somebody of that caliber validate your songwriting was huge for me.
wonderful. I was going to
Yeah.
say, I mean, talk about starstruck, back then when she was, there was
Hugely
she was
starstruck.
owning it.
Yeah, she sure was. She really was. And it's funny. One of my friends and I, who's also a singer, background singer, we were talking the other day. I was saying she's the only celebrity who's ever died that we both like stayed up separately. We both stayed up like all night just weeping.
Mm,
Like like as if a family member had passed.
mm,
It really, really affected me when she died. And it is such a huge, I don't think it pains me to think that people generations coming up behind us don't recognize necessarily what a tremendous loss it was.
mm. No, she, there was not too many people who could hit the notes that she did night after night, her gospel background and all those things. And obviously, there's
Yeah.
been a lot of stories about her, but we've got to
Mhm.
remember her for the talented, beautiful, wonderful person that she was.
Yeah. Yeah.
And it's nice to hear those personal stories. So listen, Amanda, I can't thank you enough for just being part of, the Canadians in London atmosphere and
My
universe.
pleasure.
And, we're going to be looking forward to meeting you and having a juice or a Coke as opposed to anything else, because I may be having something else in my hand, but that's my choice.
All right, I'm gonna
And
bring my chips.
you
I'll be
can
fine. I'll
you
be
bring the
occupied.
chips and yeah, and I'll look forward to seeing you at the show. And I'm sure we'll have a chat there and maybe have more to say to our members.
Excellent.
Take care.
Thanks,
All the
guys.
best.
Thank
Thanks.
you.